Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how I designed all the sounds for the Mattia Cellotto sound design contests. So I opened up my Logic and I started recording some synths. I simply routed my instrument tracks into an audio track and I started recording some notes, changing the parameters of the synths in real time. What you're seeing right now, it's me recording stuff around the house. This is my Reaper project. The project is split in 3 sections. The first section is the flyby, it's this orange one. Then there is the pre-explosion, which is this green section here. And then there is the blue one, which is the final section, and it's the actual explosion. I'm gonna quickly go through some of the interesting layers here. And let's start with some of the sounds I recorded in my house. Water in the bathtub with a bit of stretching, additional water for when it enters and when it leaves. As you can see, my project has this kind of structure where some of the sounds just start at the beginning and stop, and some others just start halfway through or even just at the very end, because I like to create some interesting variation into the sound. I don't like when a sound like this, it's just one single swoosh from start to end. That's why some of the clips are just maybe here at the end or here at the start. So that was the water. This is the sculpture synth in Logic. This is another sculpture synth. I really like to shape the envelope of almost every clip I put in my project using the clip gain, which is a really nice tool because it allows you to not just shape the gain but also to see in real time what you're doing. And this is Scotch tape crushed in my hand. Pumpkin seed. Another plugin I used a lot is this one knob pumper, and I create some automation so that the pump starts and stops when needed. Like for this synth, the pump stops when the sphere is at the center of the screen and resumes when it leaves. For this other sound, it's the other way around. Some of the sounds have some pen automation, like this smoky sound here. There are 2 different sections of the same sound with 2 different penning, and this is a synth again. This is a sculpture, and it has a really strong EQ to bring up those steamy sound. And that's pretty much it for the flyby. It's a combination of water, pumpkin seed, wobbly sounds as well, cardboard, and metal plate. Again, metal plate. A lot of processing, and this is just the flyby. Second section, one of the most important, in my opinion, for the video, is this one. It's the what I call the pre-explosion. It's when the 2 rings generate just before the explosion. The first thing I did is to imagine that something was happening even when the screen was black. So I did like a small charging up sound right before the first circle appears. This kind of pumping sound you hear, it's basically just Scotch tape with some filtering and some effects from some toys are put on the track as well. And without the effects, it's just Scotch tape. and this creates some anticipation, and I think it's really cool to imagine what's happening even if nothing is happening on the screen. And there are some Scotch tape recording for the external circle, some sparkly sounds made with the Scotch tape again with different processing. There are some synth, again sculpture. There is my metal plate, just to create a small sparkly sounds at the start. I tried to follow all the movements on the screen, the inner circle, the outer circle, everything has its own sound. And then we go to the explosion itself. One thing worth noticing is that I left a small gap between the pre-explosion and the explosion. This gives the explosion more importance, more punch. I think it's really important to do that, to do this when you design an impact or an explosion. These pink sounds you see are generated with some processing. I'm going to show you later how I did those. I started from some recordings and I heavily processed them, and I processed them offline, and then I brought them back into the project. This is this lasery sound, and I'm going to show you later how I did it. Another interesting thing I made here is to create the body of the explosion using my oven in the kitchen. I slammed it, and with a lot of processing. This is the final result. It's really crunchy, it's super dry, and I think it's really cool because it gives the explosion some really punch in the low end. And without all the processing, it's just a stretched impact, but with the effects, gives that punch the explosion needs. Another pink sounds, the same processing as the other one I'm going to show you later. The metal plate, stretched and with some EQ, compression and more fodder. And then some other synth layers here, two synth bass. This is here to follow the circle when it expands. Those are the low frequency, and then there is another synth layer which is a sculpture for the final part. When it's closer to the camera, the sound changes. So evolution again, there is this low sound at the beginning, then this other low frequency sound for the middle part, and then high frequency sculpture for the final part. And then those two sounds here, really short, really crisp, those are here to, they're here to design those two little sparks that happen just before the explosion. So you can actually feel that there is some electricity, and you can actually mentally assign that sound to those two sparks. And finally, there is this explosion here. After the big explosion happens, there is another explosion probably in the background. You can see some cloud flashing, and I basically bounced the main explosion, I put it back in the project, and I duplicated it, and I stretched it, and I processed it, and this is the result. This is a really powerful explosion happens on the background, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So this is how I created those glitchy sounds. I routed the output of this track into another track using a continuous sound like the sound of pumping seed moving inside a box, I started playing with the time and other parameters of the primal tab.